Hello and welcome to Lisbon Speed Talk. Extreme right-wing has been gaining momentum, and it is, in a way or the other, already part to be of the system in countries such as Italy, Hungary, Netherlands, Slovakia, and even France. On June 9th, the direct election of more than 700 members of the European Parliament will help to make the trend clearer. Germany has been dealing with Alternative für Deutschland, Alternative for Germany, since 2013, when it failed to reach the threshold of 5% of the votes mandatory to access the federal parliament. Since then, it has been dealt with caution, and the sanitary strap has forbidden any kind of deals with the democratic parties. Polls predict that the AfD will be the second most voted party in the coming elections in 2025, ahead of the Social Democrats. What then? To talk about these subjects, our guest this time is Philipp Sälhoff, who is joining us from Berlin. He is the director of the think tank polisphere.eu, a consulting network for the transformation of politics with a particular focus on digitalization. It has been working like that for 20 years, based in Berlin. Before, Philipp Sälhoff was the director of the international network for das Progressive Zentrum. Thank you so much for joining us, Philipp. Let's go directly to the campaign in Germany, European elections. I understand that it has been taken by what's happening with the AfD.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And respect for the great pronunciation of this German, difficult German terms. The state of the campaign in terms of the European election, and I have to add, on the same day, on the 9th of June, we have local elections in a lot of Eastern German countries, municipalities, villages, towns, cities. And there also is a rise of the AfD to be expected. That means that a lot of mayors and local political responsibility will go in the hands of the AfD, which hasn't been like a big phenomenon until now, but there's going to be a lot of more power in the hands of the AfD. And we have in fall state elections also in East Germany. But coming back to European level,
let me just interrupt you to ask, because there has been a constant difference between the eastern states and the western states. Right. So the AfD has an average 20% in the eastern part of the country, and about less than 10, around 8% of the polls in the western Länder.
That's unfortunately that's these numbers are a bit outdated. And right now it's we talk about in some states in East Germany and overall until 35% for the AfD, and also in West Germany their numbers have like significantly increased. But there is if you look at the AfD, there is a significant difference between East and West Germany. Caused or in the history of the two of Germany, and of course of the time before the reunification. That would be a bit too much to go into detail there, but the AfD is a bigger threat for democracy in East Germany. And so that's why these elections are, if you look at the German perspective, are taken to be into account as well this year. But we have an overall situation with the AfD polling. They got a bit, they lost a bit of drive in the last weeks. There was a big, you are aware of that, I know, the big report about a secret gathering of AfD politicians discussing a plan to get rid or send out immigrants and people who are not politically thinking like them, and that caused a major protest. So, and after that, they lost a bit, so around 18% now, but still, as you said, there is a high chance that they are the second most voted party. And right now, like really recently, there are more reports about connections to Russia and China when it comes to espionage and corruption and taking money from these foreign countries, especially Russia. So the AfD is very well connected with the pro-Kremlin sphere and pro-Russian forces. And also China now recently is to be, or like there are reports about potential connections, which is of course, when you look on the European level, and I think that's a big difference because also in Germany, the European policy level is not so present in the media and in the public sphere. It's not that people talk about European Parliament and what's on their agenda and what decisions are made on the European level on the everyday basis, or even if they talk about politics, it's mostly a national topic. Plus, of course, the wars and conflicts we have right now. But when it comes to foreign influence, the European Parliament is, of course, a major player when it comes to regulations and laws in terms of digital sovereignty, everything related to foreign policy, economic trade, etc. So that's why we should take a very close look and follow closely what will develop among these stories about foreign interference in European elections, especially when it comes to AfD.
Well, it's everywhere in the news today. The two cases of these members of the parliament, Peter Bistron and Maximilian K. And there's also this Björn Höcke from the Thuringian AfD leader going in court to answer in court because of the Nazi slogan he used. Actually, these are democratic instruments, so like a reasonable speech showing what's the contents of these people and the party that allows them to do this. Do you think this is possible to make it clear what kind of party this is, or it will be just food for thought, or even make these people, these individuals, victims or something in the future?
I think there is, that's very well put. I doubt that there is a big need to make clear what this party is about, because the majority of German citizens, German voters, knows what this party is about. And the frightening thing is that more and more people tend to vote for them, even though they know what how their stance is on certain policies. And yes, there is some share that is voting for them in terms of as a protest, because they are unsatisfied with the last governments, the current government, but also the last. They don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they don't see a change in their everyday life, and so they vote for them as a protest. And they are aware of that might have racist reactionary, very not only conservative, but really like a rollback, like a conservative rollback in times like 50s, 60s, and even before. So they are aware of that, but still they vote for them. And there is a growing group of people who are actually like really aware of the agenda, and they're voting for them because of these political agenda. So there was last year there was a it's called Mitte-Studie, very, very popular political study here in Germany. So the amount of people who can be considered as right-wing extremist, so not right-wing leaning or populist, like really extremist, is made a huge jump to around 8%. And so the societal climate change, and it's being more radicalized, and that's why we see a rise of crimes, of political crimes, of hate crimes. So that's why I don't think it's a way to, like, it's quite clear what this party is about. And to answer your question, sorry, is the victim myth, they will, like, that's like the normal reflex when it comes to this accusations. And even if they got charged, they will, and their network, their bubble will call this a witch hunt. And we all seen this, and still can see it with the case of Donald Trump. It's all the same, regardless of the accusations and regardless of if it's true or not. They will consider it a witch hunt, a politically motivated witch hunt, and a fight against free speech, because they actually are the ones who support the free speech, and they now not allowed to do it. I'm really curious how they will deal the accusations in terms of the China and Russia connections, because if there's like money flowing, and if there's a potential that there are informations going out to Beijing or Moscow, it's not that they are, like, especially when it comes to China, it's not that this is like a very popular thing to do. So yeah, I think they are quite nervous, or relatively nervous, when it comes to these kind of accusations. But what happens with Höcke and others, accusations of Nazi slogans, that's a common thing for them. That's not really won't make much of a change.
Do you think that this increase in the hate crimes and the fact that more and more they are spoken about is bringing somehow a normalization of the presence of the right wing and the extremism in the German society, in the worst sense of it, that it becomes normal?
It's definitely more, they widen, and that's also like a common technique. They, every once in a while, they cross a border because they say something that is not allowed to, or like that, it's not sayable in a way. It's not a societal consensus that you would call, I don't know, that you would say populist and racist things and accusations. But every once in a while they do it, and so it's out there, and then they sometimes do put them into context, or take a bit out of it and say, yeah, it wasn't meant that way. Actually, I was going to say this and that. But still, in the first place, the statement is out, and it's being, with social media and everything, being spread in the public sphere. And so people get used to these kind of statements, not with one big jump, but constantly. And also other political parties and forces sometimes feel urge to catch up in this term. So we are also for strict migration rules. We are also in favor of a strong, or like better interior security, which in general is not a critical point. I mean, you can discuss that in a democratic system, but the AfD in some cases are leading the discourse. So when it comes to migration, to security, that's also with the Ukraine war, that's a difficult topic. So and if they, and you can see that in political discourses, if a political force is leading the way, is setting the tone on an agenda, and the others follow, that's in favor, like that plays out in favor of them. So that's why migration is not, for instance, because that's one of the biggest topics for a lot of people. Everybody should be very aware that that we're not following a political agenda, because it's not about the real facts, it's about their ideology and their nationalist and almost and in a very, very often also fascist ideology.
We can say that 80s, the German society has always been capable of organizing protests, and we've seen that with every time there is up to some point, every time there was a AfD demonstration, there was a bigger one against it, at least in Berlin, where it's more visible. But it's very strange that, well, it's not very strange, but it's curious, the development of how it is spoken about. The fact that migration is more important in terms of security as an election topic, as the war next door in Ukraine and the announced Zeitenwende, so the change of the way the German government behaves from more than a year on in terms of spending money on defense and producing warfare material and so on. Where does this stand? Is it silenced, or it's not even considered an election topic?
The question of the war in Ukraine, it's definitely one of the topics that people are concerned with and talk about, and also is among others, of course, a reason for voting decisions, but not on the first places. Also, I mean, we are witnessing this war for now over 2 years. It's kind of for people getting into everyday like a standard. They get used to it in a way, as cynical as that might sound, but so it's not that super present. It's the support, like, I mean, when you see when you look at the conflict on the war in Ukraine, you have also other parties. For instance, the new BSW, a new formed group, which is kind of left national, position. Also, they are against more support for the Ukraine. The AfD is against it. Most, like the biggest fraction of the parties, are in favor of supporting the Ukraine, but also they are divided in terms of how much, what kind of support. We now have seen the recent package from the U.S. Senate or U.S. Congress, like a huge packet of aid and support for Ukraine. I think that was a very important signal. But it's especially for European elections, it's a reason, like it's an important topic, and the AfD with their stance do have some kind of a strategic advantage there, because people get tired from the war. People don't want to be involved in the war, and if they play that well, and they do it quite well, they can they gain some voters there, but I don't think it will be a major reason or a major motivation for voting in the European elections.
Every European member country relates differently with the European elections, but nevertheless, and once digitalization is one of the subjects of Polisphere, what do you expect for this 9th June concerning misinformation, disinformation, and fake news? It has been developing and getting more sophisticated at every election.
Yeah, that's true, and we definitely see already in our work day by day and over the last months a rise of artificially created disinformation. The AI tools give they are a pool of new possibilities for every one of us, but also it can be used in a bad way or in a harmful way to create disinformation, and we also have seen some cases in for instance, Slovakian election last year. So that's gonna be like a major point, but also the overall discourse being fueled by disinformation, false and like things that politicians actually said, but just like takes a sentence, put them out of the context, and then spread it, and we can still say, yeah, but that's what she or he said, but we leave out the context, and it gets a different spin. And this is definitely something that's ongoing, and it will likely get a new and a further increase until the elections. So that's why it's so important that we keep on advocating for media literacy, for the responsibility of platforms, media, and also politicians to be transparent in their communication, to call out if something is false information, and also take it down. So that's the whole debate when it comes to platforms. Yeah, so that's and the spins. I mean, if you look at the foreign interference and foreign influence, of course, a very popular pro-Russian narrative is that European Western democracy, especially Germany, is not like the government is not taking care of their own people. They support the Ukraine. They send tanks to Ukraine instead of taking care of the elderly and the poor. So very populist and yeah, also in effect.
How does that support as an argument supporting Russia? I understand, but how does it work?
Yeah. It works that the like for the like what they want to achieve is that the support for the support for Ukraine in the German population is decreasing. So that more and more people say, we don't see the worth in it. We don't see the sense in it. So why don't we take the money and build up or like invest it in our own country and the own problems we have, which is politically like it's not a causality. It's like we deal with certain issues for years and years and years, and we now have a war at the backyard or like front door as you want to see it. And there are a lot of reasons why we should support Ukraine, and so the Kremlin want to tell a story that this is actually not about a war. It's about like a Western or like US-led, even like a US-led initiative to actually attack Moscow and Russia, and also they started the war. So the NATO was the real war driver to the war. All these kinds of lies and make believe or want to make the German population to believe that their government is not caring for them. So that's why they should vote for other parties like the AfD, where they can trust for a better support and more better connections. Yeah, so that's the main narrative. So, and we probably gonna see a lot of that, like these kinds of disinformation in the next weeks and also beyond. I mean,
sure.
There is the German federal election is coming up next year, so that will be another highlight or peak of disinformation.
What about the relations of AfD or other right-wing movements, populist, more radicals, with other Western parties, such as the Italian, the French, and so on? Does it work as a whole also, or is it a national matter more?
I mean, they are, of course, quite well connected, right?
This is I'm sorry, this is an introduction to the European Parliament. We'll show a picture of what happened in 2019 in a few moments.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and also like grouped and the parliamentary groups or fractions in the European Parliament. What's interesting after these reports about that secret meeting to expel and to send people out of Germany is that Italian and also French sister parties and representatives distance themselves from the AfD, because what they planned is for their, at least for their communicated official political agenda, too far off, too extreme. So that was an interesting point to observe over the last months, so that the AfD lost some support from their sister parties. But if you still the international network of the right-wing extremists, of the right-wing populists, of national other movements is quite well working and
well financed. I gather.
Well financed indeed. That's why it's going to be definitely interesting to observe how this develops over the next 6 weeks until the election, but even more how they work in the parliamentary in the parliamentary business and processes together, because also they have a lot of differences and rivalities, but we probably gonna see, as we can see here, the 2019 election 5 years ago, and now this summer we're gonna have a significant shift to the right. So we have more nationalistic and right-wing extremists and populists in the European Parliament. So that's gonna influence. Yeah,
that was what I was going to ask you. I can imagine that you have been working on the polls and on the predictions, and when we look at it, it doesn't look that different. But I would say that individually, each country has to deal with much more right-wing home and abroad.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also the case, I mean, these are the predictions. We are going to see in June how this will end up. And I mean, if you look at these numbers, and if you break that down into certain policies, of course, we're not going to have a right-wing extreme parliament or European Parliament led by right-wing extremists in this summer or like the next 5 years. But the danger, what lies, or the risk is that also, as we said before, the other parties go like getting more influenced by them and trying to copy and their ideology, or gaining voters, let's say so, gaining votes by copying their ideology and stances. And that's a real threat, that over the next years there's more and more like a constant steadily shift to the right on a societal and political climate.
Yeah, this January, I had a conversation with a German journalist who still downplayed the importance of AfD in Germany, with the arguments such as that they don't even have a real program for a national program for the country and so on. This is going to be history in a very short time, won't it?
History, I mean, arguments, the role of yeah, and I mean they're
I mean, downplaying the role.
yeah. I think we are right now. It's hard to overestimate the risk of the AfD becoming not only on the European level. That's but that's what I said. That's it's more far away, but in the next local and state elections this year, and the next federal elections next year, becoming a really strong force, and also in the reach of governmental power, especially on the state level. That is real chance, and I think there's nothing to underestimate in that term, in their potential to achieve this. So the lack of, yes, they do have in a lot of policy fields, they don't have proper ideas or concepts when it comes to a lot of social issues, actually. So they keep on telling the public that they want to take care of the, I don't know, poor elderly, youth, women, but the actual agenda and political demands are foremost not very substantial, and secondly, in a lot of cases are not in the favor of the voters they want to appeal. But this still doesn't really, this conflict doesn't really lead to a point where people say, okay, we don't vote for them, because the political election and the political statement is, as we all know, in very few cases based on a rational weighing of different arguments and what political parties actually want to do and already have done. It's way more like an emotional process, not based on certain political concepts, unfortunately. So that's why AfD is, when it comes to migration, and that's their main political asset, that their stance on migration is very strict, very harsh, and when people are concerned about migration, the easiest way for them is, like, as it appears, to vote AfD, because all the other, or like most of the other parties, also see like the question of functioning migration, but their answers are a bit more complex, are a bit more with different shades in between, and that's something we need to work on as a like political thinking and debating society.
It's like denying all the benefits that immigrants have brought to Germany. Philipp Sälhoff, we've reached our time. I thank you very much for being here with us from Berlin, and keep up the good work. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you as well. Bye-bye.
Oh,